Hi, welcome. In this video, this is part five of my response breakdown series by way of Bill Church, pictured here, and Ivan Balabanov. And again, I'm going through this discussion by way again of talking about what's not being talked about in terms of what defines training, what defines a process. And again, talk about the core ingredients. Again, you can watch my videos. I put lots of information as to what defines training. I talk about the core ingredients, influence and control, how they're reconciled by way of a intentional interaction-based method. Again, based on dogs as social animals, based on how their decision-making process is influenced and governed at that level. Again, I'm very specific about that. I talk about anything that deviates from that. Okay, how that opens the door up by way of perceptions of dogs not changing the right way, even while, okay, you can have good responses. Okay, and understand this is the problem within this framework of response, these trainers, how they focus that way, and the inherently flawed assumptions they're making at that level. Because again, I talk about the criteria to actually put the picture to the test, to actually define whether or not those responses actually align properly by way of how you're perceived, comes to those core ingredients as the litmus test. And again, you can watch my videos as to how I'm assessing dogs, how I'm changing. Again, it's all about understanding how those core ingredients are reconciled in a very specific way. There's no way around it. Understand? So when you get in this whole thing about trainers who are aligning with this idea that trains are learning based exercise. You hear Ivan talking that way as well through his play based training. But even again, when you talk about certain kind of obvious red flags that come up through, he's talking about his method as training without conflict. Okay, which is, there's conflict happening already when you're experiencing a relationship problem with your dog. Okay, there's already conflict, and there's going to be conflict, okay, as you're transitioning the roles. Okay, but it's not a type of conflict where it's meant to create, a war with your dog. Okay, it's about doing things smart. Okay, but think of it as same type of conflict. Okay, just like I talked about the parenting example, when a child's already out of control, they're selfish, behavioral issues are manifesting. Okay, but in terms of the same social dynamic, in terms of being a parent and conflict within the context of pushback. Okay, so the child isn't going to like the fact that you're in their airspace. Okay, by way of the authoritative parenting role, but again, specific to change through the interplay of specific interactions. That's the key. And so again, we get some of these other trainers talking about, again, I mentioned this before, getting a dog to wait, okay, and different things like that. Understand it's very deceptive because responses can get you into trouble. Assumptions get you in trouble. You have to be able to apply the criteria to actually be able to establish whether what you're seeing is a true reflection of how you're perceived. Okay, that's it. Think of it like a parent who has a certain interaction with a child by way of a demand. Parental influence is part of the interplay that's going to reveal truth about the child's attitude. Okay, that's key. And so understand the dog training world is based on this inherently flawed idea of things. And so here I'm going to continue to play this to fill in the gaps with this discussion. Again, so understand this is like 4 hours long. Okay, so I've skipped ahead. I'm skipping ahead here a little bit, and guaranteed. Okay, without even watching, they're not going to talk about the real problem here in the dog training world. This is all about people's idea of things, their systems, right? But again, you go into the core tenet of whatever system it is, you have to ask yourself the question. The test is, are those core ingredients reconciled in a specific way that's going to change the perception of dogs the way I talk about? Or is it focused on appearances the way I talk about? So, in the collateral damage of that, okay, you hear your trainers go on about, you know, um, even in terms of like I was talking about losing friends, okay, over his system and stuff. It's sad. It's a sad statement. Like, if you're gonna lose friends, you should be over the truth, okay, as to what defines a process. So this is the problem in the dog training world, and this is where you get in this whole thing with divisiveness. You'll see, controversy after controversy after controversy happening in the dog training world. It's not going away. I talk about, the real problem in the dog training world, why all this stuff is happening, all the divisiveness, the infighting, trainers trying to gain social media popularity, but zero. Okay, when it comes to confronting the real issue, this is why you ever wonder why it is that things just keep going on and on and on, and there's no resolution. Even things that don't even make sense. I talk about this. How is it possible that all these trainers can promote themselves as dog training, world-renowned dog training experts, while at the same time, these other groups offering the exact same thing, calling themselves the exact same way. Like, how can that even be reconciled through how the word expert is thrown around the dog training world? Like the question is, well, who's the real expert? Like, and I would respond that, well, it should be the person who's actually talking about the real problem, not just focused on their own, idea of things. Because then you get in this whole thing about blame shifting, the collateral damage of the stuff. You'll see it if you are looking through, okay, the right lens, a unbiased lens. So let's play some more of this again to, fill in some gaps here by way of this conversation.
And what I was saying is that when you do certify TWC trainers after they go through your school, and one of the things that I love about your school is the standard that you keep, and that, and just so you know, I wrote you quite a while ago asking if you would accept me in the TWC program, and you said yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, that's
Right.
right.
So that's proof in the pudding.
Yeah.
Before,
So here you have again, this is the focus in on Ivan that way. Understand, I don't do that. Okay. I focus in on specific information as to what defines a process and just take it from there. So you have again, but you see it throughout, whether it's force free, balanced, different associations, trainers, certifying other certifying for trainers. I certify, okay, to this system for dog trainers based again on specific criteria, okay, related to a process and specific to that. So, but again, you see this out here in the dog training community. There's so much of that, associations.
before I really knew you, and also when I first asked you to do an interview, I remember what you said to me. You're like, "Well, we disagree on so much. I don't know what we're going to talk about." And I was like, "Fuck you, dude." I was like, "How do you know? You
Funny.
know?"
Well, that's funny in a way because I talk about this. I've mentioned this on the other video. I mean, within their ideological comfort zone. I mean, someone like Bill Church will probably never have me on to talk about, the real issue. I've gone on, Miracle Canine, David, Miracle Canine. I encourage you, go watch that debate. It's on my channel, it's on his channel. I don't pull punches. I go through the controversies, right? These trainers aren't talking about the controversies, right? Are an opportunity to step back and ask questions. Why is this all happening? Right? Why aren't these trainers actually going through any of that? So when you see this whole thing about we don't agree or we disagree, well, the problem here is it's understands the foundation. The majority of these trainers, they all agree on certain foundational, principles as to how they're approaching a relationship problem with dogs. They don't even classify as a relationship problem. So the whole disagreement thing is really, a distraction in a way because it doesn't get into the actual core tenet, which I do. I say, here's the application of this. This is how it sets up a counterfeit picture. This is what training is. And that's highly triggering for these trainers. But there's your line. Understand if you apply that, what I'm saying, and then you look at the mess of the dog training world, it'll all make sense. Just how big of a problem this, and then everything makes sense. So understand that, but that's the thing. You even have to question, okay, these trainers, why is it that they go on the podcast and they're even trying to call out, say, force free versus balance, but there's no clarity, or it's just like it turns into personal attacks and cheap shots for a reason, because it's not information specific that way. Okay, it doesn't get into nuts and bolts that way because this is where you're at. Okay, understand? So this whole thing about, then it just leads up to almost like marketing, just like choices. I say, or it leads up to personality. Oh, I just like Ivan, or I like Zach George, or I like whoever. It shouldn't be based on liking people that way, personality. I mean, you can do that. It should be based on, okay, I want to know what is what does trading represent? Okay, what is the criteria? Because I really care about dogs, so I want to make sure that I'm going to come out on the other side of a process with a real picture of change. But see, that's not what this is about anymore. This is just about feelings, people's emotions, personality types, and just staying within the ideological comfort zone of pretending to not get along or disagree. This is why a lot of these balanced dog trainers, they'll go in. If you listen to them, they'll talk about how they agree with the exact same concepts: counter conditioning, behavioral adjustment training, you know, um, you know, uh, desensitization. They use treats. They use clickers. Balanced dog trainers using clickers. It's just like, okay, what's going on here? Like, see, it's just like, and even given, balanced dog trainers giving force free trainers a hall pass. Like you hear them talking, and they sound just like force free trainers, like 80% of the time, for a reason. Okay, because they're married to the same idea of things. People have to understand what's going on here.
Don't even know me, man. Like that's how we started off this. And this is what I think is important, is that we should be able to challenge each other and have discussions and bring up our points that
And again, my response to that: what does that actually look like? What does that actually mean? What does it actually mean? The dog training world's getting worse. What does it actually mean? It's not. They're not getting into the nuts and bolts of what the actual issue is here. The application of this idea, how it sets up a counterfeit picture. Not getting into the. I talk about responses. Like I said, I call it the question of the century. It's up on my Facebook page. It goes right to the heart of the matter. These trainers aren't touching it because they can't. They don't want to. They've already made their choice. See, that's the thing people have to understand. This is a rigged game here. So when they talk about, it's like pretend not get along. It's not getting into the actual problem here at all. They're just skimming the surface. And a lot of times it's just like this whole thing about, well, we can have a conversation, agree. It's so ridiculous. That's why on Bill Church's podcast, they had a couple of balanced doctrines go on. They made the statement, well, anyone who thinks that they know truly the dog's mind are a liar. And then these same individuals are out there marketing, their idea of what training is. Like that's so contradictory. Like what is going on here? But see, that's how turned over this stuff is. It's almost like so ridiculous and so contradictory that it's become normalized that people aren't even applying any critical thinking to sort through any of this, to say, as individuals, to say, oh, like this is like what the heck is going on? That's the problem here. Understand that, and then people are just upset over what I'm saying. And I'm like, what are you upset about? Like, go answer I call the question, go answer that. You can't. And the dog training world's a mess, and dogs are being destroyed, and all these trains can't even get along. So it's like, well, what are you upset over? What I'm just the messenger. Should be upset with me. You should be actually going in and doing what I did and ask some serious questions, and then go from there. If you really care about dogs, you really care about people, right? That's not what's going on here in the dog training world. Just understand that.
we disagree with, and not the hush hush about it, but because dogs at the end of the day are the ones that benefit from our interaction. And that's why I'm so happy to know you. And if
Because here's the thing, and I believe this has gotten so extreme with these trainers out there, and so like arrogant and pride that they don't believe, because again, making money and often like trophies in the background, all this stuff. They don't believe they're accountable to anybody. They don't believe they're accountable to ask to respond to certain questions, to respond to what's really going on. That they're just going to push forward. That's all this is about. Understand that. It's exploiting, right? Talk about exploiting certain relationship dynamics going on here. That's exactly what's happening. If you look at what I'm saying about response, why does the people end up with a counterfeit picture? And people get certificates, and these dogs oftentimes aren't even the perception haven't even changed whatsoever. It's a joke. And these trainers, I think it's just become so big, so massive, that it's like, well, we don't have. I mean, who's that? I mean, we're not responding. I mean, that's where we're at. It's just so big of an issue here.
eventually I do want to do the TWC program, I want to learn from you, and being able to visit you at your place. But
And
what are
TWC is it's really it's not like, oh, you're certified now you're this professional trainer guru. It's like if you pass the test, it basically says that you understand the system.
So here, we're going to stop we're going to stop here on this part of the conversation. I'm going to be skipping ahead to my next part because again, going in this whole thing about, being a dog trainer through a system and all this stuff. We're just gonna gloss over that part and get into some more. So again, we're about an hour in here. Again, the takeaway here is understanding this whole thing about, talking about disagreements or going on, but the questions you ask, like, why is it that these trainers aren't willing to have a real conversation, aren't actually looking at the real problem? And that's the problem in itself, for sure. Thanks for watching.